One thing does indeed lead to another, especially when it comes to UFOs, aliens, crop circles, and the paranormal. Hello, I'm your host, Rob Skiba. You know, part of the reason I started the Revolutionary Radio Project was to create a forum where I could discuss some of the themes and topics that are brought up in my new sci-fi series, Seed. On a previous show, we discussed Agartha and theories about the inner or underworld, the world beneath our feet. And at the beginning of this series, in the Seed pilot episode, we learned that Agartha was the call sign for my main character's military unit when they were assigned to Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction. In the story, they go into a portion of the underworld where they encountered a very dangerous ancient creature. To learn more, check out seedtheseries.com. Now, shortly after the opening title credits and the first commercial break, the next plot point that we come to is the introduction of the appearance of a large crop circle formation in North Texas. And once again, that's one of the subjects I wanted to discuss on today's show, among other things, I'm sure. I'm very excited about our guest today. We're going to be talking with Dr. L.A. Marzulli. L.A. is the author of numerous books, blogs, and articles about aliens, UFOs, crop circles, and other paranormal subjects. His book series, The Nephilim Trilogy, made the CBA bestsellers list and continues to thrill readers a decade later. He actually received an honorary doctorate from Pacific International University for his work on that trilogy. Mr. Marzulli is also the author of the nonfiction work Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, a hard-hitting expose on how current political landscapes may indeed be bringing about ancient biblical prophecies. His latest offering, The Alien Interviews, features 17 personal, intense interviews with people who have been directly involved with UFO phenomena. Dr. Marzulli has lectured on this fascinating subject, presenting his exhaustive research at conferences and churches, as well as making appearances and doing interviews on numerous national radio and television programs. And now, we've got him right here on the Revolutionary Radio Project. L.A., welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Rob. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. You know, you've covered a lot of paranormal subjects in your books, CDs, blogs, and videos, and that sort of thing. How did you first get involved in this sort of research? What got you interested in these subjects?
Well, I basically came from that side of the aisle, if you please. I left the church. I was raised Catholic and left the Catholic Church at 13. Fell in love, as most high school kids do, and had a girlfriend pretty much all through high school. When I was 18, she was 16. She was killed in a hit-and-run automobile accident. This led me into a quest, which carried on pretty much for 12 years until I was 30. I started to read a lot of New Age material. This is circa 1968, 69. So this is well before the Jesus movement really hit the East Coast, if it ever really got there at all. Calvary chapels were burgeoning. The Jesus movement was in full array here on the West Coast, but where I grew up outside of Philadelphia on the East Coast, it was pretty non-existent. In fact, what was the trend was Eastern mysticism. And I was reading books by Carlos Castaneda. I took a course in Silva Mind Control, which is a New Age visualization technique. I then became a follower of Guru Maharaji and joined an ashram and was there for about 3 years. Came out of that extremely disillusioned. Got into the Carlos Castaneda thing again, Vision Quests and Ouspensky and Helen Blavatsky. Complete New Age paradigm. In other words, if you had asked me, let's say when I was 27 or 28, I was pro-abortion. I believed that it was, it was fine to do something like that. I believed in extraterrestrials, that they were in fact our space brothers. Well, I became born again when I hit 30 years old, which was a life-changing. That, by the way, is 30 years ago now. Life-changing, mind-altering experience, sort of like a Paul on the road to Damascus. Remember, I was being pulled out of the enemy's camp, which he didn't like that at all. And there was a lot of battle going on for about 2 to 3 years. So I've always been interested because I came from that and had been deceived for so long, for 12 years, actually longer, under the deception of the occult, of New Age philosophy, all that. Eastern mysticism. And so when I became a Christian, I gravitated towards two things: prophecy, which I found absolutely fascinating, and didn't know anything about it until I became a Christian, and I was just overwhelmed by the specificity of biblical prophecy. And then, of course, as an apologetic towards the occult / New Age, and as your show, as your moniker or the theme song, one thing does lead to another, and so that's sort of the background. That's how I got into it all.
Wow. I really believe that God prepares us in advance for the things that He's called us to. You came to Christ later in life, but clearly everything that you did in your prior life, in the first 30 years, has prepared you for what you're doing now.
Correct.
Crop circles, they've always intrigued me. They've been around for a long time. Many people don't really understand this phenomenon. I think that a lot of people just think they're all fakes and hoaxes created by the likes of people like Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley. What's your take on them? What do you think about crop circles?
Well, I think it's the good hat, bad hat thing of the ufology, specifically the good hat part of the bad hat, good, or the good cop, bad cop, I should say, not bad hat. What am I thinking? Hat. The good cop, bad cop, sort of 1-2 punch. The bad cop is the cattle mutilations, all right, which is extremely grisly, very graphic, and overwhelms a person for the most part with fear. The crop circles is exactly the opposite of that. Hence the good cop analogy, and it inspires awe, a sense of wonder, a sense of benevolence that these beings are trying to communicate, and they are trying to communicate. But it's part of a deception, in my opinion, and it continues unabated through decades now of research. They stake out the fields. They, meaning crop circle investigators, UFO investigators, film crews, lots and lots of people stake out the fields in England, and they have caught people making the fake ones. Okay, there is a difference between the fake ones and the real ones. The real ones, for the most part, the grain is laid down in a woven pattern. You can't do that. You just can't. You need hundreds of people to do that. So it's like the grain is interwoven together. And that's one way of telling. What's interesting is that there are also other anomalies in the crop. The nodes will be blown out as if some sort of a high radioactive or like microwave type occurrence has happened. People have seen orbs spiraling around the field. There is a hoax, a video hoax. We actually used it in our Watchers DVD. But we're pretty sure it's a hoax. But we used it anyway because the hoax is based on eyewitness accounts of these orbs like creating the circles in the fields. So we used it in the Watchers DVD, which is now available on our website, lamarzulli.net. But what's interesting is I believe that these are not man-made, although some of them, as you pointed out, Dave and Doug and the crew, and the crappies who go out and make these things, the artistes or whatever, who, why obfuscate the water, why monkey things up? But they do it anyway. But when we look at some of these other crop circles that are just huge, and remember, you can only see these things from the air. When you're down in the field, they don't look like anything for the most part. You can barely make out an image, or because some of these things are like 600-700 feet in diameter, huge. So when you're down and standing in the field, you kind of go, what am I looking at? It's only when one gets in an airplane that one begins to see the complexity of the crop circle and what the image actually is. There was one this year which I found extremely interesting. If it was a hoax, good luck. But there were two images in fields that were separated by a road, and they showed an image of what many believe, and this is bizarre, they're pixels. In the same way, like, we have images now, pixelated images, digitally formed images. These were pixelated images in the crop. And when some real smart guy, a lot smarter than I am, took these two images, which looked identical in the fields, but there were slight differences, and overlaid them on top of each other, the image became obvious that it appeared to be the face of Jesus as shown in the Shroud of Turin. I blogged about it. Yeah, some pretty bizarre stuff. And, of course, what are they saying here? And it's like they don't say anything. It's just, okay, here's the picture. Are they trying to tell us that Jesus was an alien, that Jesus was E.T.? And see, there are people that believe that. I mean, when you look at the History Channel's Ancient Alien series, that's basically what they're promulgating, that that many of the signs and wonders that we see in biblical times were, in fact, done by our space brothers. I mean, this is what Von Daniken and others of his ilk are promulgating all day long. And that Ancient Alien series now is in its second season, 20 hours last year, another 20 hours this year. I was interviewed for both series. I think I had about 20, 30 seconds in the first series. So far in the second series, I have not been used at all, and I'm sure I won't be. I come from a totally different paradigm. In fact, I am what they would call their antithesis to what they're trying to say, and they will not show me, because I'll smash apart their arguments, because it all goes back to the Nephilim and what the scriptures say and all this, and they don't want to go there. They don't want to look at the real hardcore evidence of the fallen angels and what actually is the best. Occam's razor says the simplest answer is usually the correct one. Well, when we start to plug in the Nephilim and fallen angel equation, in my opinion, this is the best answer to the phenomenon.
Yeah. I just, while you were talking, I went on Google and punched in crop circles in the search window there and hit images. And you look at the complexity of these images and the size of these things. Some of these things are just massive.
Huge.
And the idea that somebody's out there with a board and some rope and, and a stake in the ground making these things is absurd. Some of these are so intricate.
You could do some of the simpler ones, but at 2:30 in the morning when it's completely dark and we look at the absolute perfection of these things, give me a break. They
are completely symmetrical. Perfect.
Yeah. And by the way, for the skeptic out there, Nat Geo, and of course Nat Geo are all, Darwin Dumbos. That's the paradigm that these people go under. They believe in Darwinism and there is no God. So they have an axe to grind on the Nat Geo channel, make no mistake about it. So they were going to go out and show how, the crop circles, there's nothing supernatural. Nothing exists. This is it, okay, to them. And so they're out there trying to show that crop circles are just, a bunch of people doing this thing. Well, get this. The crappies actually have it on film, and I exposed this in one of my blogs several years back, and they're out there in a real circle and saying that they're doing it. In other words, it was a total hoax on the part of Nat Geo. They're in a circle that's already been made, and then they're filming it as if these guys are making it. And they were caught by another film company that went out there and said, "What are you guys doing?" And there's Nat Geo for you. It's just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And of course, all the information by Levin Good's lab, who's done research on the grain from the circles, which show that there are absolute anomalies in the crop that are not found from stomping the crop down. There are literally anomalies in the grain, like the nodes being blown out. They just completely dissed all that information. See, so it's the same thing. When people have an axe to grind, whether it's a worldview axe to grind, a theological axe to grind, whatever it is, it's obvious. Oh, no, just like the History Channel, the Nat Geo, they're only going to present the information that will prove their theory. And, of course, it just falls of its own weight, and it's extremely disingenuous.
And there are a lot of anomalies, as you mentioned, associated with these things. A lot of times mechanical or electrical equipment won't work in them. I've even seen stuff that people have gotten healed in these things. That's just something's going on here. Symbols, they conceal or symbols reveal. And, they conceal from people who don't have eyes to see, and they reveal to people who do have eyes to see. What's your take on that? What do you think these things are saying? What do you think the message is here?
Well, the message, in my opinion, is extremely plain. All the books that I write, everything that I talk about and blog about is constantly pointing to this, what I call the coming great deception. And what they're doing is they're signaling, these so-called extraterrestrials, they're signaling, first of all, that they can move with impunity over our airspace, and we can't stop them. Same thing with the cattle mutilations. They move with impunity. They take the cows. Same thing with the implants. They take you. You're powerless to stop them. Of course, unless you know Jesus and you can shout out the name of Jesus, which will stop the abduction. But they move with impunity, and the governments of the world can do nothing to stop them. And yet they continually tip their hands, showing us that they're here, that they're not going away. And that, in fact, is the title of the new DVD that we're promoting. And I'm trying to promote it here on your show shamelessly.
Yeah.
But it's called UFOs Are Real, Burgeoning, and Not Going Away. And everything that we just mentioned, crop circles, specifically the cattle mutilation and, of course, the alien implants, I really get into that in this 52-minute DVD. That's what we really show, is about a good 10 minutes of cattle mutilation stuff and then about 20 minutes concerning the alien implant. So the phenomena is deep, dark, mysterious, ongoing, burgeoning. It's not going away. The church is, for the most part, completely asleep regarding it. I had a very interesting email from this Baptist pastor who was trying to inform me that my interpretation needed some correcting, and so he was going to correct me. And I wrote him back and said, please, before you attempt to do that, do some research. Read Missler's work, read Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, Pember. Do some homework here. J.R. Church. The list is endless of people who have looked at the Nephilim and what this stuff is and the fallen angels and how they cohabited with the daughters of men, creating the hybrid race known as the Nephilim, which resulted in the flood. Interestingly enough, Jesus, Yeshua, points back to the days of Noah as the time to look. It'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. And, of course, that begs the question, what differentiates those days? People will disagree with this. That's fine. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Let's not be, intellectual Nazis with your opinion, though, and forbid me from viewing or expressing my opinion. Sidebar, just like Al Sharpton's trying to say that Rush Limbaugh should be censored. He pronounced it Rush Limbaugh instead of Limbaugh. I just love that. Should be censored from the airwaves. It's just, why, Al? Because he disagrees with your concept, your worldview, your paradigm? I thought this was America where we had free speech. But because he doesn't say the things that you want him to say, now he should be censored and silenced? Isn't that interesting? But that's what we see, too, in the Christian community. It's like, well, you don't agree with me, so, we're going to have to silence you or, or heap ridicule or call you a heretic or whatever it is. And it's like, that's called intellectual fascism in my book, and I just don't want any part of that. All that to say this, I believe that the phenomena is real. It's not going away, that the stuff that happened back in Genesis 6 is now happening again. The fallen angels are making this end run. Remember, we're told very specifically in the book of Revelation that this character, the seed of the serpent, which of course becomes eventually the Antichrist. We're told that this figure is going to seat himself in the temple of God. So how's this all going to happen? Is it just going to, voila? We know that the mystery of iniquity has been working for 2,000 years. What the heck is that? And it's got one end goal, to seat the Antichrist in the rebuilt temple. And what does 2 Thessalonians tell us? That there will be a great apostasy. The Greek word is apostasia, which we get our word apostasy from. That there'll be a great apostasy before the man of sin, the Antichrist, is revealed. This great falling away. It's not the rapture. I love people who try to torture the text and say that it's the rapture. It's not rapturo. He would have used the word. It's apostasy. How the heck do you get rapture out of the word apostasy? It's just like, let's torture the text. Okay. To bolster my position of a pre-trib rapture, which is fine. Pre-trib may happen. Who the heck knows? Who cares? We're here to fight the fight. We're in the game. Let's pay attention to the game and what's at hand, and he'll beam us out and take us out when we're supposed to be taken out. It's not our job to debate it. Let's destroy the works of the devil and quit fighting amongst each other. But all that to say that what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time in history is, of course, the presence of the fallen angels. Is it happening again today? The short answer to that is yes, it is. And we see it manifesting in this cat-and-mouse game with the UFO. Of course, we look at the breeding program, which has been ongoing for literally decades. And there are critics who say, well, maybe you're being deceived. Maybe that's what they're trying to deceive us with, is that there is a breeding program. There really is. Well, then I don't know how to play the game. There is a breeding program, and that's why we spend so much time with Dr. Roger Lear at the end of the Watchers DVD video, because we show the implant in a person. It is a real thing. It's not an illusion. It's not some sort of delusion. It's real. And the person is claiming he was taken by Greys and this thing was implanted in him. Well, now we got the X-rays, and not only the X-rays, we went in and we removed the thing. And then we talked to the man who had it removed from him afterwards. What is he saying? Well, what do we do? Discount the witnesses when we're told specifically in biblical terms that let 2 or 3 witnesses establish a thing? Well, we've got the witnesses and we've got the hardcore evidence. Here's the implant right in front of our faces, and it's got nanotechnology, and the metallurgy, which has been tested and analyzed, shows that the metal is off-world. It's stuff that's found in meteorites. It's not on this planet. You can't find this type of ratio in metal on this planet. It doesn't exist. So it's coming from somewhere. It also has radio frequencies, which, when analyzed and traced, come from deep space. So what are we looking at here? Is it E.T.? No, not E.T. at all. It's fallen angels. Where is the second heaven? Well, the universe, including wormholes and perhaps gateways and portals to other dimensions, which we know nothing about. That's where the fallen ones reside, because we know they've been kicked out of the third heaven, which is where the Most High God is. And we know at some point in the book of Revelation they're kicked out of the second heaven, and they're on earth. Woe to the inhabitants of earth. And that's when the revealing happens, in my opinion. It's really interesting stuff.
You've mentioned quite a few things. You're talking about, Jesus said in Matthew 24:37, he said, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man.
Right.
And you just talked about that, but what a lot of people don't realize is that, Noah lived 950 years.
That's right.
There was most people think of the days of Noah, they just think of, he built an ark and, just deal with the flood, but there were 600 years prior to the flood and about 350 years after the flood, and there's an awful lot that went on in both cases in the days of Noah. A lot of things happening back then, and you were talking about a hybrid program, and you mentioned the word watchers. Can you describe for my audience what a watcher is? I mean, I don't think too many people are familiar with that term. It originated in the Book of Enoch, did it not?
Well, the Book of Enoch certainly talks about watchers, but we also get it from the Book of Daniel, which talks about a watcher, a holy one from heaven. And this is a class of angel. A watcher is a class of angel, and there are good watchers and bad watchers. And unfortunately, the ones we know from the Book of Enoch that 200 angels descended on Mount Hermon, and more than one were watchers. And we know that Enoch goes to heaven and takes the petition by the watchers, and is told basically when they come back that you shall have no peace. And see, when we read stuff like that, we go, well, what does that mean? You shall have no peace. Well, this is why they're so crazed and they're so angered and so ticked off, because they have no peace. Where does peace come from? What is everyone in this world really looking for? Peace, inner peace. Where do we get inner peace? Not from gurus, not from mantras, not from Oprah or Dr. Phil or anybody else. There's only one who is called the Prince of Peace, and he gives it to us free of charge. It's nothing we ask for, or it's nothing we deserve or work towards. It's just ours. It's a gift. And I know when his peace is withdrawn from me, boy, do I feel it. I take it for granted because I have peace. I have peace in my heart and peace in my mind and peace in my spirit most of the time. And that, except when I hit a lousy shot on the golf course. Then I give up my peace. But, it's like...
You mentioned you mentioned that the watchers landed on Mount Hermon. Mm-hmm. Now, that was in the days of Jared, if I remember right.
Correct.
That, I've done a lot of studying on Mount Hermon. In fact, I went there in 2005.
Wow.
And it's really interesting that Jesus makes this discussion that is talked about a lot. He takes his disciples to Caesarea Philippi and asks, who do men say that I am? Mm-hmm. And people say, well, some say Elijah, some say Jeremiah, or whatever, some of the prophets. And of course, Peter says, you are the Christ, Son of the living God. But what always intrigued me about that discussion is Jesus gets so excited by Peter's answer. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why? Why does he get so excited? Because, from the day he was born, people told him he was the Son of God. When he got baptized, John said, behold, the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. And when he picked Nathanael, when he started his ministry, Nathanael called him the Son of God. He said, why? Because I saw you under the fig tree. And every time a demon saw him, they called him the Son of God. So I'm like, why did Jesus get so excited about it when Peter asked him, or makes the statement? And I never understood that till I stood where the conversation took place at the base of Mount Hermon in Caesarea Philippi, where there's altars to the Greek god Pan. We could do a whole show just on that. But what's interesting is that Mount Hermon is located at 33.33 degrees north by 33.33 degrees east from the Paris prime meridian. And, of course, 33 is 0.33. 1/3 of 100 is 33.33%. So the fallen angels landed on the only geographical location on the planet that fits their number. And then when Jesus says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. And you talked about a hybrid breeding program. That's where the Watchers in Genesis chapter 6 mixed their seed with the seed of men, women, and they created these angel-human hybrids. And then you've got this event in Roswell, New Mexico, which, by the way, is also on the 33rd parallel, and you multiply it by pi, and it gives you the longitude. So I believe that, you know, this burgeoning thing you've been talking about has started up right up just the way it did the first time, with a visitation that has been continuing ever since. And now you talked about a breeding program. Talk to us a little bit more about that. What is this breeding program? What's this whole thing about hybridization and cattle?
Yeah, and before I get to that, the information you just cited about Roswell and the 33rd parallel and all that, that's the work of David Flynn, and I always want to mention him.
Yes.
Because he wrote a paper on this. I actually mentioned him in Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, and I quoted him, verbatim, because it's one of those startling discoveries where he put the pieces together. I mean, he did the work and figured, if I go to the polar opposite from Mount Hermon, guess where I wind up in? Roswell, New Mexico. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. And, of course, these fallen ones do everything extremely deliberately. It's very, very deliberate what they do. The breeding program is this. Russ Dizdar talks about Homo Satanas. In other words, the Antichrist will be some sort of a fallen angel human hybrid, which is the Bible calls a Nephilim. I mean, that's what it is, like it or not. And, of course, that gets into the whole thing, angels don't procreate. Well, first of all, it never says that. It just says they don't marry. It never says that they're sexless or that they don't procreate. And see, that's just bad exegesis on the part of the person who raises that argument. The rabbis all through the centuries believe that the fallen angels had sex with the women, thus the Genesis 6, which, by the way, is their scriptures, not ours. Hello? And so if you really want to know what happened, go to the rabbis and ask them. And they'll tell you point blank that fallen angels came and this is what they did, and also afterwards. We also got the writings of Josephus that talk about first century Jewish historian that talk about the bones of a Nephilim were openly on display. So this breeding program goes back and mimics what we see in Genesis 6, although it's different and has a different dynamic. We're not getting giants like we had in the first incursion before the flood, which may have been 25, 30, 35 feet tall. We don't know just how big they were, but they were huge. And if let's be conservative, if they were 20 feet tall, that's ridiculous. And if they were demonically enhanced, think what they might have been able to do. Just plug in the Incredible Hulk, and that's what you're looking at. The Incredible Hulk, even though it's a cartoon, it's fiction, in my opinion, is a graphic illustration, knowingly or unknowingly, of what a Nephilim might have actually looked like, acted like, and been like while roaming the planet before the flood. The new breeding program is to create this human alien hybrid, or the human fallen angel hybrid, which can pass and look like human, but will again be demonically enhanced. There's a video that I posted on my blog site, and we ran with it for a number of days, which I usually don't do, but this one I left up for about 3 or 4 days, called Madness in the Fast Lane. And
oh man, that's a crazy video.
Yep. When I'm lecturing, I tell people that, because people take notes, and I say, write this down, and when this lecture is done, go home tonight, or maybe wait till the light of day or the next morning, and plug in YouTube and watch this thing. It's called Madness in the Fast Lane. And to whet your listeners' appetites here, there are these twins, identical twins, who are in the UK, and they are first spotted by TV cameras, because remember, the UK is wired up. They've got cameras everywhere. They're on the freeway in a dividing lane, in the dividing median, which is about 8 feet wide, guardrails on both sides, and a strip of grass, okay? And they're walking down this median. Well, of course, you can't do that, and they dispatch a couple of squad cars to get these women out of there. Well, as the police cars, their version of the highway patrol, close in on these two twins, they react in a very bizarre way. They rush headlong into oncoming traffic. Both of these women are hit by cars, 2 different cars. They're now lying on the asphalt. One would only assume that they would have sustained multiple injuries, perhaps even death. And they're down for about maybe a minute. And as the police go over, they're calling the ambulance to come and get them and all this stuff. The women get up and start fighting with them. It's just, huh? Now they finally get the women to come to the side of the road. Ambulance pulls up, so there's other cars. Now you got a whole bevy of police and ambulance and stuff on the side of the road, which is a freeway, 8-lane freeway, 4 lanes going one way, 4 lanes going back the other way. Real easy picture, right? And all this is on video because there's cameras all over the place. And the police have these 2 women on the side of the road. One of the twins breaks free. She slips out of her trench coat, right, and goes running, again, headlong into oncoming traffic. She is hit by an 18-wheeler, run over by an 18-wheeler. She's now lying on the ground, multiple fracture, bones sticking out of her leg, and she's leaning up, clawing at the police, spitting at them. It's just unbelievable. Then the other twin runs out and is T-boned by a car, and it shows the car, the windshield is caved in where her head hits it, and she's down on the ground for like a minute. She gets up, and it takes 6 people to restrain her and bodily, physically carry her off the road. And when they're doing this, she breaks free of their hold 2 or 3 times. They finally sedate her. Look, all that to say, you need to watch Madness in the Fast Lane, because in my opinion, what we're looking at is either a satanically, demonically enhanced super soldier, as Russ Dizdar talks about it, someone who's been ritually abused through satanic ritual abuse and has been programmed as assassins, or these altars will come out, they're demonized, or we're looking at hybrids, Nephilim hybrids roaming the earth that are manifesting. I don't know which, but whatever it is, it's extremely alarming, and it's here. It's here right now.
Yeah, we picked up his book, The Black Awakening, Russ Dizdar's book.
Right.
We went to, my wife and I went to a conference up in Ohio at the beginning of October. That's where we met him and spent time with him at his house and talked with him and stuff. And that book is, my wife's read more of it than I have, but, man, it paints a very frightening picture. People don't realize how bad the days of Noah were. A lot of people just think, people were bad. They were sinful or whatever. And that's all they think about. But that's not what Genesis 6 says. Genesis 6, the whole reason for the flood was because of the beginning of that chapter, that verse, it says that the sons of God came down to the daughters of men and created the Nephilim. These abominations, these creatures that were never meant to exist. And, something very interesting while you were talking, in the book of Enoch, chapter 9, I believe it is. Chapter 10. In verse 12, says, when their sons have slain this is the sons of the Nephilim, have slain one another, or the fallen angels, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations under the hills of the earth until the day of the consummation of their judgment and until the eternal judgment is accomplished. And what's interesting about the book of Enoch is that right at the beginning of the book, it says, this book is not for this generation, but for a future generation. And, the book of Enoch has come in and out of the canon of Scripture many times throughout our history, but ultimately it ended up not in our Scriptures. But then it pops out. You get this event in 1947, July 4th, 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. And then it's not a coincidence that almost exactly a year later, 2 things happen. Israel becomes a nation, and a little shepherd boy throws a rock into a cave, and here's a jar break, and out pops the Book of Enoch and other books. And in Tom Horn, in his book Apollyon Rising 2012, makes this observation about those 70 generations and talking about the time of the flood being roughly 2800 to 2900 B.C., he says, because a prophetic generation is 70 years based on Psalm 90, verse 10, the days of our years are 70 years and 10, then Enoch's 70 generations times 70 years equals exactly 4,900 years forward from the flood. If the flood took place between 2800 and 2900 B.C., this brings the return of the Nephilim to the immediate hour. And, man, that is such a sobering statement. And I've watched that whole Madness in the Fast Lane thing, and I'm like, that's just the beginning,
that is. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Big time. I mean, that was like a test run or something, because the picture that Russ Dizdar depicts in his book, The Black Awakening, is truly terrifying. And Jesus said, if those days weren't shortened, those days being, I believe, our days, no flesh would survive.
And see that's the most sobering. It's the most sobering statement in all the Bible, and people don't get that. And the church, unfortunately, for the most part, is not arming and equipping people for what is coming. What is coming is unprecedented. And why would he write that? Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. I mean, those are the most chilling, sobering words in all of Scripture, in my opinion. And yet, the church, Joe, don't worry, business as usual, blah, blah, blah. And it's
you're
not
right.
anything but business as usual.
That's the whole reason why I'm doing this show. It's the whole reason why you write the books that you write and the blogs and the DVDs that you put out. I've pitched Seed as Seed, the series, the TV series I'm working on. I've pitched it as Lost meets Battlestar Galactica wrapped up in the X-Files. And the reason I've done that is because all three of these deal with subjects involving the supernatural. But Battlestar Galactica and X-Files in particular deal extensively with the idea of hybrids. Of course, they take it in a totally different direction. And like you mentioned earlier, the History Channel's series on ancient aliens, they're all they're programming people to believe the lie that's coming. And the church isn't talking about this stuff, and they're ridiculing those who are talking about this stuff. So, I'm just kind of racking my brain going, how can we get the truth out to the masses? And I heard somebody once say that one of the best ways to do it is through science fiction, and the reason for that is because people go into science fiction already suspending their disbelief. So if people have suspended their disbelief, then they're open to believe whatever we want to show them, which is basically what the enemy's been doing for decades. And somebody once said to me, we have to get as good at telling the truth as the devil has been at telling lies. So, and this is fascinating stuff. It's very intriguing and if I can use the word entertaining, but it is meant to be kind of what I call edutainment, educational entertainment, to get the word out. And so I so appreciate people like yourself you've been doing this for a long time, haven't you?
Well, 20 years. I started researching the Nephilim about 20 years ago, and the first book of a Nephilim trilogy, which, like you, I got the word out through sci-fi, hit the bestseller list. That came out in 1999. Last book came out in 2005, so it's been a while. And book 1 and 2 hit the CBA bestseller list, but unfortunately, Zondervan just never really got behind the series. There was zero promotion for it, and it is what it is. So the book went out of print from them. We bought the rights back, and we sell it on my website, lamarzulli.net, and we continue to sell them, 1 or 2 a day. Sets go out to people, so people still read it, and it's a great way to download the information. But from that, because a lot of people won't read fiction, came a nonfiction work, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, which really much of the work that went into the Nephilim trilogy wound up in that nonfiction tome, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural. And then the Alien Interviews was written because of the skeptic, someone who has no idea about the UFO phenomena picks up this book and it's like, oh, read. And from there, the new DVD, and it's a whole different medium going into DVD, as you know, and film. People will buy a DVD and sit down and watch it rather than read a book. And so the title of that DVD, UFOs Are Real, Burgeoning, and Not Going Away, is simply to and look, it's 52 minutes of hard-hitting material. We've had nothing but great accolades from people saying it's the best DVD on UFOs they've seen from more than one person. We've had 3 or 4 of these from people in the field. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So we know we've struck a chord here with this DVD. It's 52 minutes long, and it's available on my website. But the title of that is UFOs Are Real, Burgeoning, Not Going Away. We don't talk about the Nephilim or what the paradigm is or what's behind it. That's later on. This is episodic. Maybe halfway through we'll start to address that. Maybe on the 10th episode or something we'll start addressing some of that, or we'll have hints all the way through it. I even hint at who's behind it a little bit in the first one. But all we're trying to do is show people that something's going on. The phenomena is real. It's genuine. It's not delusion or illusion. It's here. And we need to start talking about it and dialogue about it within the churches and not be, or have our theological feet in concrete, as it were, and be afraid to look at some of this information.
Yeah, I've seen it too, by the way. It's really good, folks. You need to get this DVD. It's lamarzulli.net, and you can get the DVD on your website, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's really good. I've seen it. The implants, you did a lot of stuff on the implants. What was the doctor's name who's been taking them out?
Dr. Roger Lear.
Yeah, I'd actually seen a whole series on him. You can watch him on YouTube. He's got a whole series on YouTube as well, talking about that stuff. I mean, this stuff is real. It's actually in people, and people are walking around with it.
And that's why we did it, Rob. The reason why there's this whole element of people that are trying to say that this phenomenon is not real, that it's all illusion, and we're saying, excuse me, it can be illusion, but it's also can be very, very much, hardcore physical craft. Abductions are real. Breeding program is real. Implants are real. That's why we went with specifically the cattle mutilation and the implants, because it is you can't say that, oh well, the cattle mutilation is just an illusion. No, it's not. It's right here, and we've got forensic evidence. Something is going on. And of course, people say, well, you have. I'm sorry, what?
I was just saying, it's pretty graphic too. I mean,
well, it's graphic and it's horrific to look at. And people say, well, there's no connection between that and the UFO phenomenon. Excuse me, yes, there is. We've got hundreds of witnesses saying that they see craft over the farm, over the range, wherever. So I mean, how many times do we have to have witnesses come forward and say this is what they're seeing before we start to believe what the witnesses are saying? Why are we so ready to discount witnesses? It must be swamp gas caught in a weather balloon and a flock of birds reflecting the planet Venus. I mean, it's like, that's not what they're saying they saw. And then we've got people saying that they actually have seen animals being sucked into the bottom of a ship in some kind of a light beam or something. So, look, I'm not making this stuff up. No one in decades, look, this phenomenon's been going on for decades, and yet no one has ever been charged with a crime. And this is like a major crime. This is like taking someone's livestock and mutilating it, and then if you did that, why would you drop it back in the farmer's field? What are you, some kind of a sadist? Well, what do you think the fallen angels are? And what are they doing? What's the currency they travel in? Fear. What does the cattle mutilation promulgate? Fear to the 9th degree. I mean, give me a break. And so this is why we went with the cattle mutilation, and I tell a story briefly on the human mutilation. There's one in Brazil where the autopsy, it's on the internet. We use that one still it's an actual autopsy photograph. It's not doctored in any way. It's from the Brazil mutilation. And the phenomena is exactly the same. The forensic evidence is exactly the same as in the cattle mutilation. It's horrific, absolutely horrific. And so we talk about that, specifically one case back in Pennsylvania. We're hoping to get the funds to get over to Pennsylvania, camp out for 2 weeks, and do a whole expose just on that story, because that's what we really want to do, because we know that's huge. It's a smoking gun. So this is tell that to somebody who's got a their 3,000-pound prize bull mutilated with its sex organs cored out and its flesh from its jaw stripped down to the bone. Tell him that that's some sort of delusion or illusion, and it's dropped back into the field in 4 inches of fresh fallen snow with no footprints around it. Give me a break. And there's no helicopters. No one's hearing anything. Come on, folks. How many times we have to go through this before we start to wake up and realize that this is the work, in my opinion, this is the work of the fallen angels.
Yeah, it's almost like I was thinking, what was it, Paul Harvey, who used to say, now for the rest of the story?
Yeah.
Was that him?
That's Paul Harvey,
I've watched the 2 seasons of the Ancient Aliens series, and they don't even really go down this route, and it's so important.
No, that's not at all.
To do what you're doing, because you're like, okay, and now for the rest of the story, It's like, okay, you watch all this garbage on the History Channel, well, now get a load of this. Because you're addressing some things that are really important, I think, especially in terms from our paradigm of talking about it from a biblical worldview. Even though you haven't really gone that far yet, like you said.
No, not yet. Not yet.
So you see this as actually being episodic, in length. You can have a whole bunch more episodes to this, or
well,
what?
That's the plan. We're actually working on number 2 as we speak. And this one, I'm not going to tip my hand too much here, but yeah, we're working on number 2 as we speak. It is episodic. If I had millions of dollars in the bank, or someone who wanted to finance this thing with millions of dollars in the bank, I mean, we'd be cranking these things out, because we realize that we're sitting on something with just the film itself. I mean, people, we're selling these things like hotcakes. People are getting them, showing them to their friends. Look, our in-laws sat down at Thanksgiving, in Pennsylvania. We're out here in California, but my in-laws sat down with the family gathering. They all watched this thing. Of course, they made the kids leave the room, and it created all this discussion, which is exactly what we want to have happen. Is discussion. So it opens people up to the phenomena. It creates dialogue between people. What are we looking at here, folks? And that's really the goal of the first one. But the other, it is episodic, and where we hope to go with it is further in-depth reporting of different aspects of the phenomena, so people will understand that we need to come to terms with what's going on. Putting some water in the dog's bowl here, in case you're wondering what that gurgling sound is here. Live radio, you gotta love it, folks.
That's right. So if somebody wanted to get behind you and support you in this, how could they do that? If they wanted to help you with your budget or invest or get involved, is there a way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just shoot me an email, la@lamarzulli.net, la@lamarzulli.net. I mean, we find it. We had a small donation graciously accepted, or given to us, I should say, by one party, and it was great. But that's like, let's face it, that's lunch money for the history crew for one episode. Literally, that's what it is. And yet we did this 52-minute video, which is rivaling anything anybody's seen. At least that's what we're hearing from people in the industry. I mean, we did it on a shoestring budget, but we did it, and we were able to get the Dr. Lear footage, which was fantastic, because he's close by. But to get to Pennsylvania, that takes airplane tickets and all that stuff. Look, what we're hoping to do is sell about 10,000 of these things, because that would really give us the cash to be able to get other things and up and running, and that's what we're hoping for. But it's so far we're hovering right around the 1,000 mark, getting close to our first 1,000 sales, which is fantastic, because it's just the only marketing we have is my website, basically, and the shows that I do. That's it. But we keep selling these things on a daily basis, and we're coming up on the coast-to-coast appearance on December 22nd with George Norrie. I'll be on for 3 hours. That's one of our biggest shows, and I know we're going to sell a bunch there. We'll be talking about the Watchers DVD, but I'll also be talking about Christmas and the Star of Bethlehem and what it is and what it isn't and all that kind of stuff. So that's coming up December 22nd.
So you just mentioned the Star of Bethlehem. It's funny, I heard you on another interview. I can't remember who you were talking with, but you had mentioned that you used that as a plot device in, was it the Nephilim trilogy?
I used it as a plot device in the third book of a Nephilim trilogy, and lo and behold, in 2009, it's Life Imitating Art, Benjamin Krem from Maitreya, Share International, announces to the world, oh, guess what, by the way, the reemergence of the Star of Bethlehem is about to happen. Let me read. This is the back cover of the Book of the Revealing, 2005. The supposed reemergence of the Bethlehem star, mysterious shining light over Jerusalem, has the world on edge. I mean, there it is. That's the first line in the back of the cover of the Revealing, which is the third book of a Nephilim trilogy. And what do we see? What do we see in 2009? Benjamin Krem announcing, oh, it's the reemergence of the Bethlehem star. And guess what he says? 2,000 years ago, it was a UFO mothership, and now it's back. That's what he's telling people. I mean, it's just, hello, and you would think that would, cause people to go, wow, something's going on here. How did Marzulli know that? Well, I'm not a prophet, and I never ever call myself that. But I do find it interesting that what I wrote, literally, I mean, come on, guys. I mean, that was a plot device. And in 2009, it's we're reading about it. Someone announces it. I mean, it's unbelievable.
It's funny, God's the ultimate creator, and he created us in his likeness and in his image. And I think that when his creation gets creative, we tap into the creative source that made us in the first place.
Absolutely.
And I call it getting downloads, where God just kind of plugs that USB cable in your head and starts downloading stuff. And you think you're kind of making science fiction here, but it turns out to be true. That's what's been happening with Seed. I'll write something, and then, man, it comes out to be true. I'm like, whoa, I wrote stuff about July 11th, 2010 this time last year, before July 11th, 2010. And since July 11th, 2010 has come and gone, God's been telling me, hey, now go back and check out what really happened on that day. And I'm like, whoa, But I also wrote a script back in 1999. It was called The Omega Conspiracy, spec script I was writing, about cloning Jesus from the Shroud of Turin.
Right, there you go.
and one of the things, and it's funny because I was pitching this at a pitch festival in L.A., and after I pitched it, I had my car parked in a parking garage there near Grumman's Theater.
Sure.
And I came out, and as I pulled out of the underground parking garage, I looked to my left, and somebody had spray painted on a dumpster, "Clone Jesus." And I was like, oh, my God, I just pitched a script about that. I didn't write it, but I saw that on there. But one of the plot devices that I used was the same thing, was a reemergence of to mimic or herald the Antichrist in a similar fashion that Jesus came,
Crazy stuff, huh?
Yeah. We've only got a couple minutes left. Is there any resources you could point people to on this Bethlehem star phenomena that's been coming out?
Yeah, we actually sell a DVD on my website, and of course that is lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.net. You'll find all my books, The Fabric of Time. You'll also find The Star of Bethlehem. It's by a guy by the name of Rick Larson. It is absolutely fascinating, and I'll be talking about that on December 20th on George Norrie's show, because it's important that people understand what this thing was. But we sell, we sell all my work, but some of the other material that we do has tied in and segues into my work, and that's why we carry the Star of Bethlehem, The Fabric of Time, Messages from Heaven, which is of course by Jim Tetlow, with dealing with the Marian apparitions. But our biggest sell or biggest draw right now is the Watchers DVD. Some of the things we talk about are, one of these lights in the sky, what factual proof is there of UFOs? Are people interacting with UFOs now? What is going on East City Ranch? What's the difference between orbs and craft? What other phenomena is going on? Then, of course, we talk about cattle mutilations and the alien implant. We've got real footage of an alien implant actually being surgically removed in an operating theater. So, you'll want to get this DVD if you're at all interested in the subject, because it's got a wealth of information that, frankly, we think in some ways it's groundbreaking. Some of the footage that we have, specifically with Dr. Lear, is groundbreaking. Yeah.
Boy, that should do well for you too, George Norrie. I mean, I don't think there's any bigger audience out there than Coast to Coast.
I agree. Yeah, that's my biggest show to date is Norrie's show, and it's always good because we can touch a lot of people's lives. I know the people that have actually given their life to Christ because of that show. Because I was on that show, they heard me talk, and they emailed me, and we opened up a dialogue, and they gave their lives to the Lord. So that's pretty cool. What could be cooler?
Awesome. What day is that? December 22nd?
December 22nd.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to checking that out. And my little show, I've got 20 listeners.
Yeah, that's all I have on mine too. I hear you.
20 million, whatever. But so, man, it's been a real honor speaking with you. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, L.A. And
pleasure was all mine, Rob. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
God bless. Take care.
Okay, you too. Ladies and gentlemen, this stuff is real. As L.A. says, it's burgeoning, and it's not going away. There are a lot of secular movies and TV shows out there talking about this stuff, and no one's talking about or looking at it from a biblical worldview. We've talked about it before. The church is, for the most part, asleep. They're not talking about this, and when people do talk about it, like L.A. and Tom Horn and others, we keep getting testimony over and over and over again about the church basically kicking them out or shunning them. The word needs to get out, and that's why we're having people like L.A. Marzulli on this show. That's why people like L.A. Marzulli and Tom Horn and Steve Quayle and a whole lot of others out there, they're writing books, they're doing seminars, they're making DVD series. Guys, check these things out. Support these efforts. Go to L.A. Marzulli. That's LAMARZULLI.net. Go to LAMarzulli.net. Check out his blogs. Check out the videos he has posted there. Order his books. Help support his ministry. Get his DVDs. Watch this stuff, and then share it with people. so that people can understand what's really going on out there. That's the reason why I'm doing this show. It's the reason why we're creating the TV series Seed as a way to get this kind of information out to the masses, but get it out in a way that's what I called earlier edutainment. It's educational entertainment that puts these stories out there in a way that entertains people, but shows them what's really happening. And my goal is to plant seeds in Seed that will lead people. As you're watching the TV show, you start to realize that I put characters and situations in the storyline, like where somebody might be walking by a conference room and it just might say on the marquee, L.A. Marzulli speaking on such and such. I'll put these little things in there that will, as people start watching the TV series, they'll say, hey, some of these things are real. And if I do a good job of this, then I'm going to plant seeds that will systematically lead the viewers to websites like lamarzulli.net, where they can find some of these resources for themselves. And I never have to preach once. I just put the stuff out there, and people will go see it, and they'll learn for themselves. So I believe it's important to get behind people like L.A., help them to get the word out, and help us to get the word out about this show and about Seed the series. Listen, I thank you for listening to our show today, and I hope you have a great day.